believe it or not, but rock and roll and their famous musicians paved the way to many innovations. The music moves the soul and gives a voice to loud, creative outsiders who don't like to color inside the lines. Rock and roll helped usher in the civil rights movement and an era of desegregation in American life and has inspired others across the world with their lyrics. Rock and roll has indeed helped shape how the world is today. So when we hear of a musician's tragic death, the sorrow ripples around the world and has a universal effect that we have just lost a wonderful talent and musical genius. Hi, welcome to YouWannaWatch, and in this video, we're going to talk about 20 famous rock band members who passed away. At number 20, we have Cass Elliot. The Mamas and the Papas. Cass was the queen of LA's pop society in the mid-60s. Her voice helped make the harmony that made the Mamas and the Papas. Cass Elliot, 32, died in the early morning of July 29th in the London flat of Harry Nilsson, where she was living with her friend and road manager, George Caldwell, during her stay in England. Death was ruled accidental at a coroner's hearing the next day, and the post-mortem showed that she died as a result of choking on a sandwich while in bed, and from inhaling her own vomit. She had complained to friends recently of frequent vomiting, possibly the result of dieting. At number 19, we have Keith Moon from The Who. The Who released Who Are You?, their first new album in 3 years. But Keith's drinking and drug-taking had impacted on his performance and his appearance. Moon's playing was erratic and unreliable, and he was made to pose Christine Keeler style for the cover photographs so as to conceal a paunch. Keith's condition meant The Who were in no state to tour, which left him anxious and depressed. The public Keith Moon was The Who's manic drummer and hell-raising daredevil comedian, a man who only ever lived in the moment. And it was this version of Keith Moon that led to his untimely death on September 7, 1978. At number 18, we have Jonathan Melvoin from the Smashing Pumpkins. From the outside, the Smashing Pumpkins' situation couldn't have been better. In the summer of 1996, the alt-rockers were riding the multi-platinum success of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and in the midst of a global tour. Billy Corgan and his Chicago group were one of the biggest bands in the world. But everything wasn't hunky-dory with a couple of the Pumpkins members. During the Melancholy tour, drummer Jimmy Chamberlin and touring keyboardist Jonathan Melvoin had developed a penchant for dangerous drugs. Their entanglements with heroin would lead to multiple overdoses and eventually, for one of the musicians, death. At number 17, we have Jimi Hendrix from the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Jimi Hendrix made history as one of the first lead singers and guitarists to experiment with mixing fuzz, distortion, and feedback while playing and recording guitar. His overall skill was extremely mind-blowing, especially because he never learned how to read or write music. Jimmy would just play what he thought sounded good and felt right. The legend was so famous that several films have been made about him, including one called Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child on Netflix. Yet another historical aspect of his musical career was his performance at the first Woodstock. That being said, Jimi Hendrix rose to fame in a very psychedelic time for music, which led to his involvement in drugs. It was in 1970 that he overdosed on barbiturates in his sleep. It was not your average overdose, though it is said that he vomited in his sleep and choked to death due to the drugs. Jimi Hendrix changed the face of music with his guitar playing and bluesy voice. At number 16, we have Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. Phil Lynott was the first Black Irishman to reach the pinnacle of significant musical success, even if it was for a brief time. He started his dream team, Thin Lizzy, in late 1969 with his childhood friend and the band's official drummer Brian Downey. The rest of the members were shuffled continuously throughout the course of their journey. A bassist, lead vocalist, and songwriter, Phil Lynott was the guiding light of the band, who succeeded in producing sellout classics such as Whiskey in the Jar, Jailbreak, The Boys Are Back in Town, and so on. However, Phil didn't get to savor the taste of success as the flame of his life was snuffed out by a deadly wind in 1986 at the age of 36. Phil Lynott had a growing reputation due to his persisting drug and alcohol abuse, and it was spiraling out of control. At number 15, we have Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones. For all the highly publicized brushes with the law that Mick Jagger and Keith Richards would have in the late 1960s, it was the original leader of the Rolling Stones, Brian Jones, who was the group's original bad boy who lived, in the words of Pete Townshend, on a higher planet of decadence than anyone I would ever meet. A gifted musician, Brian Jones helped create the sound of countless classic Stones tracks with his work on guitar, sitar, marimba, and other instruments that were then considered exotic for rock and roll. Rolling Stones guitarist Brian Jones was found dead of an apparent accidental drowning on July 3, 1969. 2 years later to the day in 1971, Jim Morrison dies of heart failure in a Paris bathtub. At number 14, we have Ian Curtis from Joy Division. Joy Division was one of 4 hugely important British post-punk bands that could trace its origins to a now legendary performance by the Sex Pistols at the Lesser Free Trade Hall in Manchester in June 1976. Along with founding members of the Buzzcocks, the Smiths, and the Fall, Mancunians Bernard Sumner and Peter Hook decided in the immediate aftermath of that show to form a band. On the evening of May 18, 1980, Ian Curtis, lead singer and lyricist of the British group Joy Division, hangs himself in his Cheshire kitchen. He was only 23 years old. At number 13, we have Ronnie Van Zant, Cassie Gaines, and Steve Gaines from Lynyrd Skynyrd. When Lynyrd Skynyrd's plane crashed in the forest of Mississippi in 1977, 3 main members of the band were killed: Ronnie Van Zant, Cassie Gaines, and Steve Gaines. The tragedy of the crash forced the surviving band members to retire temporarily. In 1987, they got back together with Ronnie's brother Johnny on lead vocals. The band known as Lynyrd Skynyrd still tours today, although only one of the original members is part of the group. At number 12, we have Bon Scott from AC/DC. AC/DC had been a band on the rise throughout 1979. Highway to Hell, their 7th album, had truly put them on the map, especially in America. The accompanying tour had also proved to be a huge success. On January 27, 1980, the final show of the Highway to Hell tour took place at the Gaumont Theatre in Southampton, UK. This would also prove to be Bon Scott's last show. Bon Scott was found dead on February 19, 1980. The AC/DC frontman had been out drinking with friends, but the casual evening took a terrible turn as Scott passed out in his car and ultimately choked to death on his own vomit. He was only 33 years old. At number 11, we have Michael Hutchence from the band INXS. Michael Hutchence might have survived numerous wild nights, but he wouldn't outlive the passionate but rocky relationship he began in the mid-90s with TV host Paula Yates. As a music star, Hutchence had known the British presenter since the 80s. Yates also had a foot in the rock world as the wife of Boomtown Rats singer and Live Aid organizer Bob Geldof. She was married to Geldof, with 3 daughters, when she began an affair with the Australian rocker following a particularly flirtatious television interview. INXS frontman Michael Hutchence lived a rock and roll lifestyle. He dated famous models and pop stars, and accounts of his drug and alcohol use are widespread. According to friends and bandmates, the singer found the dark allure of rock star excess irresistible. Michael died on November 22, 1997 at 11:50 a.m. when a maid discovered his body. After a belt around his neck broke, he was discovered naked and kneeling behind the door. Hutchence was 37 years old at the time. At number 10, we have Jerry Garcia from Grateful Dead. Jerry Garcia, like his band The Grateful Dead, defied his life expectancy not just by surviving, but by thriving creatively and commercially into the 1990s far longer than most of his peers. His long and strange journey ended on August 9, 1995, when he died of a heart attack in a residential drug treatment facility in Forest Knolls, California. Jerry Garcia, a legendary guitarist and cultural icon, died at the age of 53. At number 9, we have Clarence Clemons from E Street Band. Clarence Clemons, known affectionately to fans and friends as the Big Man, was the backbone of the E Street Band. He played on countless Springsteen songs, including Born to Run, Thunder Road, Jungle Inn, Dancing in the Dark, Badlands, and The Promised Land. Clarence Clemons, the legendary saxophonist in the E Street Band who played alongside Bruce Springsteen for the past 40 years, died on June 18 from complications from a stroke. He was 69. At number 8, we have Duane Allman from Allman Brothers. Duane Allman was born in Nashville and grew up in Florida. Before he formed the Allman Brothers Band with his brother Gregg, a singer and keyboard player, Duane had made a name for himself as a session musician for Atlantic Records at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Duane Allman, the Allman Brothers Band's slide guitarist and leader, is killed on October 29, 1971, when he loses control of his motorcycle and crashes into the side of a flatbed truck in Macon, Georgia. He was 24 years old at the time. His band continued to tour and record after Allman's death. Rolling Stone ranked the Allman Brothers as the 52nd greatest rock band of all time in 2004. At number 7, we have another Allman Brothers member, Gregg Allman. Gregg Allman, a once long-haired rocker, formed the Allman Brothers Band in 1969 with his brother and another friend. This Florida-based band stayed true to their Southern roots, with their rocking rhythm guitar and Gregg's vocals adhering to the traditional Southern style, but without sounding too country. Gregg's life was marred by tragedy, including the death of his brother in a motorcycle accident, being diagnosed with hepatitis C, and later developing liver cancer, all as a result of a life spent drinking and partying. Given the damage inflicted on most of his organs, he had many health issues including an irregular heartbeat, which caused him to cancel his tours. It was in 2017, at the age of 69, that Gregg Allman, one of the most memorable rock singers, passed away from his fast-spreading liver cancer and was put out of his misery. At number 6, we have Jim Morrison from The Doors. Jim Morrison and his group were a part of one of the most influential rock bands of the time after forming The Doors with some fellow UCLA film students in 1965. With his bluesy vocals and lyrics about, well, the ladies, this long-haired frontman was a hit with the ladies. It didn't take long for the band to go on tour and record on a regular basis. They were living the typical 1960s rock and roll lifestyle of drugs and alcohol after finishing their fourth studio album. Jim Morrison became wary of constantly recording and touring and decided to take a break. He and his wife moved out to Paris, which turned out to be the last the public heard from Morrison. It was in Paris that he suffered from a drug-induced heart attack. This death is one of the more memorable ones of all time, due to the fact that we only were able to enjoy The Doors for such a short period of time. Jim Morrison, tragically, was only 27 years of age when he passed. We are nearing the end of our video, but before we proceed, we would like to ask you to please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/c/YouWannaWatch2022 and follow us on our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/YouWannaWatch. Okay, now back to the story. At number 5, we have Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. Chester Bennington was Linkin Park's frontman from 1996 to 2017. Unlike some other rock legends, he stayed at the top of his game for a long time, allowing him to leave a significant mark on music. From teenagers to adults, if you're of this era, you can without a doubt say that you have listened to Linkin Park. Bennington's lyrics and vocals have had an impact on many lives, encouraging people to persevere through the toughest of times, from their softer spoken songs to their loud crowd pleasers. Chester Bennington hung himself at the age of 41, just a month after Chris Cornell, another rock singer and close friend of Bennington's, died unexpectedly. Dealing with life after performing at Chris Cornell's funeral was not easy for Chester, so much so that he found himself no longer able to go on. At number 4, we have Chris Cornell from Audioslave, Temple of the Dog, and Soundgarden. Chris Cornell fronted several bands, including Audioslave, Temple of the Dog, and, most notably, Soundgarden, with one of the most interesting voices in rock and roll. His grungy vocals, as well as his ability to get a classic rock raspy scream, were ideal for those long, mysterious songs. Chris was not only a fantastic singer, but he was also a wonderful father. From a young age, he would bring his children on stage to dance around, and as they grew older, he would occasionally bring his daughter out to sing along with him. Despite some of his darker lyrics, no one expected Cornell to die the way he did. It was in 2017 that he hung himself at the age of 52. Chris, his vocals, and his music will be missed by all rockers and music lovers around the world. At number 3, we have Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. Although he was not the first classic rocker, Kurt Cobain changed the game when it came to rock genres and is unquestionably one of the most memorable rock singers to have died. We were all used to big hair, loud guitar solos, and fast-paced music, but Kurt Cobain elevated grunge and alternative rock to new heights. The release of angsty and angry songs was exactly what teenagers and young adults were looking for as they grew up in changing times. Nirvana, his band, was an instant success thanks to heavy distorted guitars and dark lyrics. It comes as no surprise that Cobain was not particularly happy with life, as evident in some of his lyrics. It was at the age of 27 in 1994 when Kurt Cobain took his own life with a shotgun. He paved the way for a whole new subgenre of rock and roll to come out of the 1990s, one that is still relevant today. At number 2, we have John Lennon from the Beatles. John Lennon co-founded the Beatles, widely regarded as one of the greatest rock bands of all time to emerge from the United Kingdom. Lennon was a part of something special in the music industry as one of the band's voices and rhythm guitarist. With their trippy-sounding songs and softer rock ballads, the mop-headed foreigners took the country by storm. In one of the strangest deaths of a beloved rock and roll singer, John Lennon was assassinated in front of his apartment while stopping to say goodnight to his child. He was shot 5 times and hit with 4 of the bullets, taking this rock legend away from us way before his time, at only 40 years of age. And finally, at number 1, we have Freddie Mercury from Queen. This incredible talent possessed one of the most musically gifted voices in any rock and roll band. There was never a dull moment when watching Freddie Mercury and the rest of his band, Queen, on stage, whether it was his ridiculously wide vocal range or his entertaining live performances. Another outstanding feature of this musician was his ability to play the piano so well. His vocals, stage presence, and mustache were what made him so memorable. His stage performance was nothing short of flamboyant, and he owned every minute of it. Bohemian Rhapsody is a biographical film, also one of the Queen's songs, that lets us look at the life of Freddie Mercury portrayed by Rami Malek. It's an awesome movie that allows us to see the creative genius of Freddie and to see his life struggles with fame and his homosexuality. Freddie Mercury died from HIV/AIDS at the age of 42, and it was a difficult death for the world to accept, given the massive impact he and Queen had left on the rock and roll scene. These iconic rock and roll legends, though no longer in our space and time, will forever be in our culture, hearts, and minds. And their music will always stand the test of time. So as long as we know how to honor them, their legacy will live on. What do you think about our list? Did we miss anything or anyone that you think should have been included? Let us know your thoughts by writing a comment on this video. If you're interested in our other videos, just hover over the videos and just press play. Until next time, watchers, thank you for watching our video.